Human, you can't just marry me. My sisters demand you take them too. Sci-Fi HFY Story. Ryan stood at the edge of the landing platform and watched the twin suns sink behind the steel towers of the city. The air smelled sharp, like heated stone and metal. Ships moved in slow lines above him, their lights blinking as they followed strict flight paths. This world was not beautiful in a soft way, but it was strong, and that strength pressed down on him from every side. He was not a soldier. He was not even meant to be here alone. He was a human envoy, sent to finish a trade and peace agreement that had taken years to reach this final step. One wrong word could turn calm talks into open anger. Everyone had warned him before he left Earth. This clan did not forgive mistakes. Ryan adjusted his simple jacket and checked the data pad in his hand. The meeting with the ruling family was set for the next morning. Tonight was meant to be quiet, a rest before pressure and sharp eyes. That was the plan. The plan did not last long. A sudden alarm cut through the evening air. It was not loud at first, just a deep pulse that made the platform vibrate under Ryan's boots. He looked up. Ships above the city broke formation. Lights turned red. The calm lines shattered into chaos. Ryan did not understand the local language well, but fear sounded the same everywhere. Shouts echoed across the platform. Guards ran past him, their armor clicking as they moved. Somewhere far away, a blast rolled through the city like distant thunder. Raiders, his translator, whispered in his ear. Unregistered ships, fast and violent. Ryan's first thought was simple: get inside, stay alive. Let the guards handle it. That was what a sensible person would do. Then he saw her. She was not wearing armor. She stood near the edge of the platform, frozen, staring up at the sky. Her skin reflected the red warning lights, pale and almost glowing. Long markings ran along her arms and neck, symbols of her house. She was young, maybe not in years, but in the way she held herself, unsure and exposed. A blast struck one of the defense towers nearby. The shockwave tore across the platform. Metal screamed. The ground tilted. The woman lost her balance. Ryan did not think. He dropped the data pad and ran. The edge of the platform rushed toward her. Beyond it was open air and a long fall into the city depths. She reached out, her hand grasping nothing. Ryan threw himself forward. His fingers closed around her wrist just as her feet slipped free. The force nearly pulled him over too. Pain shot through his shoulder as he hit the ground hard. For a moment they hung there. The city below glimmered, uncaring. Ryan gritted his teeth and pulled. Muscles screamed. He was not strong like the guards. He was just human. Still he pulled again, slow and steady. He used the edge of the platform, his body anything. Finally, she rolled back onto solid ground. Ryan collapsed beside her, gasping. Another blast shook the air, closer now. Guards reached them at last, weapons raised. One knelt beside the woman, speaking fast and sharp. Others dragged Ryan back, pulling him to his feet. He tried to explain, but no one listened. Everything happened too fast. They were rushed inside the fortress hall, deep into the structure where thick walls blocked out the sounds of battle. Doors sealed behind them. The air felt heavy. Ryan leaned against a wall, breathing hard. His shoulder burned. He looked up and saw the woman watching him. Her eyes were wide, dark, and locked on his face as if he were something unreal. "You should not have done that," one of the guards said in broken human speech. Ryan blinked. She was falling. "That is not your concern." Before Ryan could reply, the woman stepped forward. She raised her hand and the guards fell silent at once. Her voice was clear, steady, and filled the room without effort. "He saved my life." The guards lowered their heads. Ryan straightened slowly. "I did not know who she was. I just reacted." The woman studied him closely. Then she nodded once. "That makes it purer." He had no idea what that meant. The battle outside ended as suddenly as it began. The raiders were driven off by defense fleets. The city settled back into tense quiet. Damage reports came in. Injured were taken away. Life continued. But for Ryan, everything had already changed. He was summoned before the ruling house that very night. The hall was vast, carved from dark stone and metal, lit by lines of soft light that traced ancient symbols along the walls. At the far end stood several figures, tall and still, their presence heavy. The woman from the platform stood among them. Now she wore formal robes and the marks on her skin shone faintly. Ryan bowed as he had been taught. He kept his eyes lowered. "You may look," a voice said. He raised his head. The speaker was an older woman, her posture straight, her gaze sharp. Power clung to her like a shadow. This was the head of the house. "You are the human envoy," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," Ryan replied. "My name is Ryan." "You saved my youngest daughter," the woman said. Ryan glanced at the one he had pulled from the edge. She met his eyes again, her expression calm but intense. "I did not know she was your daughter," he said. "I would have done the same for anyone." A murmur moved through the hall. The youngest daughter stepped forward. "His words are true," she said. "He acted without thought of gain." The head of the house studied Ryan for a long moment. "Then the bond stands," Ryan frowned. "I am sorry, the bond." The daughter turned to him, her voice softer now. "My name is Luma. By our law, the one who saves a life at the edge of death becomes bound to that life." Ryan's stomach tightened. "I do not understand." "You will," Luma said. "You are now my chosen." Silence fell like a blade. Ryan felt heat rush to his face. "There must be a mistake. I am here only to represent Earth. I cannot be part of personal customs." The head of the house raised her hand. "Custom is not personal. It is law." Ryan opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Every instinct told him that pushing now would be dangerous. "I did not mean disrespect," he said carefully, "but my people did not agree to this." "That is your concern," the head replied. "Ours is settled." Luma looked at him with something like relief and something else he could not name. Then another figure stepped forward. She was taller than Luma, her build strong, her eyes cold and assessing. Scars crossed her arms, old and deep. Her presence felt sharp, like drawn steel. "This cannot end here," she said. Another sister joined her, then another, 3 in total. Each carried herself differently, but all shared the same marked skin, the same heavy authority. The eldest among them spoke again, her voice calm but firm. "If the youngest is bound, then the rule applies." Ryan felt the air grow thick. "What rule?" The sister's eyes locked onto him. "A chosen outsider does not take one. He takes the bloodline." Ryan stared at her. "I am sorry, I think there is a translation error." "There is none," she said. Luma inhaled sharply but did not deny it. The head of the house turned her gaze back to Ryan. "You have stepped into something older than treaties and trade. Our family does not divide its bonds." Ryan's thoughts raced. This was impossible. This was beyond anything in his training. Earth Command would never allow this. He was a diplomat, not a symbol, not a spouse to an alien house. "I saved her because it was right," he said, "not to claim anything." The eldest sister nodded once. "That is why the law chose you." The hall fell silent again. No anger, no shouting, just the weight of certainty pressing down on him. Ryan realized then that the danger was not over. The raiders were gone, but this was a different kind of battlefield, one where words could trap him more tightly than chains. Somewhere far away, Earth waited for his report, and standing before him were 4 sisters whose traditions could bind his future to theirs forever. Ryan swallowed and lifted his head. "I will need time," he said. The eldest sister's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Time is something you no longer fully own." The doors of the hall closed behind him with a low, final sound, and Ryan understood that saving one life had just placed him at the center of a storm that could change more than just his own fate. Kira's eyes followed Ryan as he stepped cautiously into the inner chambers of the stronghold. The room was wide and high, lit by soft lights that traced the edges of polished metal and stone. Every corner carried a shadow, and every shadow felt like it might conceal someone watching, judging, deciding. He was not a soldier, but his instincts prickled as if he were in the middle of a battlefield. The sisters stood together, forming a line that seemed to stretch the width of the room. Luma was closest to him, her expression calm but alert. Next to her, Kira's arms were crossed tightly, her stance rigid and commanding. The third sister, Sola, leaned slightly forward, her eyes sharp and calculating. The last, Veen, remained in the back, her face hidden in shadow, silent and still. Ryan tried to speak, but the room pressed in on him. Words seemed weak against the presence of these women, each trained to command, to judge, to enforce. I want to understand, he began, keeping his voice even. I do not know your ways, but I will follow your rules if I must. I only want to survive this safely. Kira's lips pressed together. Survival is not the same as loyalty, she said. Her voice was low, steady, sharp. You have been thrown into a path none of your people prepared you for. One wrong choice and this house, our family, will suffer. Ryan swallowed, nodding. I understand. I just need to know what is expected. Sola stepped forward, her eyes scanning him as though she were reading every thought inside his head. What is expected is more than understanding. It is action. Protect one sister and you must protect all. Honor one and you honor the entire bloodline. Fail in any task and the consequences ripple further than you can imagine. Ryan's mind spun. Trade talks had been simple, negotiations of resources and alliances. Nothing like this. He tried to force a smile. I am good at following orders, that much I can do. Kira's gaze hardened. Following orders is easy. Following instincts without knowing the consequences, that is dangerous. You may believe you are strong, human, capable. You will see that our laws are not tests of strength alone. They are tests of judgment, endurance, and loyalty. One misstep and even your strength cannot save you. The youngest, Luma, took a small step toward him. Do not fear everything at once, she said softly. The bond is not punishment. It is choice in its own way. Ryan wanted to believe her, but he could not. A bond that demanded him to protect 4 women, all strangers, in a culture so different he barely understood. It was more than intimidating. It was terrifying. Before he could ask another question, the eldest sister spoke again, her voice echoing slightly in the wide chamber. We will allow you to spend the night under our observation. Tomorrow, you meet with the council formally. You will see the trials that await. Consider this rest and remember, everything you do is watched. Ryan was led to a simple room on the upper level. Though small, it had a view of the city's towers and the soft glow of lights from the streets below. He closed the door behind him and sank onto the cot. His mind raced. He thought of Earth. He thought of the peaceful diplomacy he had trained for, of the clear-cut rules and instructions. None of that applied here. He was no longer an envoy. He was a participant in an ancient ritual of honor and blood, and every choice mattered. He had just begun to process what it meant to be bound to one alien life when the door opened again. Luma stepped in, carrying a small tray of water and food. She set it down and looked at him without hesitation. You must eat, she said simply. Strength matters and judgment fails when the body is weak. Ryan accepted the tray with a nod, studying her carefully. You do not fear me, he asked. I am human. My actions may seem strange to your people. Luma shook her head. Fear is for those who do not understand. I understand in part that you acted to save life. That is enough for now, but understanding is not all. You will be tested. Tested? Ryan repeated. He already felt the weight of that word pressing on him. Yes, she said. The bond is not just words, it is action. You cannot simply agree to it with speech. You will show your worth in trials, in protection, in choices that matter to us. And more than anything, you must survive the judgments of my sisters. He looked at her carefully. Are they all like you? Luma hesitated, glancing toward the door. No, each of us has a place, a strength, a duty. My sisters are not gentle. They do not yield easily. To gain their trust will be more difficult than anything you have faced. The weight of that statement settled on him. He had faced storms, raiders, political conflicts, but he had never faced beings who judged with both thought and instinct, who held power in ways he could not even imagine. A sound from outside the room made him flinch. It was not danger this time, just the city alive with noise, but it reminded him of the precariousness of his situation. He could not make mistakes. Every action could trigger disaster. He ate in silence while Luma watched. Her calm presence helped, but the tension remained. This bond, however strange, was no longer theoretical. It was real. He was tethered to a world and a family that demanded more than understanding. They demanded participation. When the tray was empty, Luma collected it. "Rest now," she said. "Tomorrow begins your true introduction. The council will judge you. My sisters will test you. The path will be dangerous, but it is not impossible. You have already shown courage today. That is not small." Ryan nodded, unsure how much courage was enough in a place that measured honor in unknown ways. She turned to leave, then paused. "One thing," she said quietly, her voice almost lost in the soft hum of the room. "Remember that fear is natural, but hesitation will be fatal. Decide quickly, act firmly, and the bond may survive. Fail, and everything collapses." The door closed behind her. Ryan leaned back against the wall and exhaled, trying to calm the racing of his heart. He closed his eyes, imagining the path ahead. He did not know what trials awaited him, what dangers lurked, or how the sisters, powers, and authority would shape his every decision. The city below continued its pulse of light and sound, a reminder that the world did not stop for him. Life went on, decisions were made, and he was now part of something far larger than himself. Ryan finally lay down, letting his exhaustion carry him toward sleep. Yet even as his eyes closed, he could feel the weight of observation, the quiet presence of four sisters whose expectations would shape his every step. One human among them, caught between their rules and his own instincts, now had no choice but to learn fast, act wisely, and survive. Tomorrow, the trials would begin, and nothing would ever be the same again. Ryan woke before the first light of the twin suns touched the towers outside. The room was quiet, but he could feel the presence of the sisters even in his empty bed. It was not physical. It was something heavier, like judgment pressing down unseen. He rose carefully, stretching muscles stiff from the previous day's exertion, and walked to the window. The city below looked calm, but he knew better. Calm was fragile here. A soft knock at the door made him start. He turned to see Sola standing there, her posture precise, her eyes assessing. "It is time," she said. "The council will meet shortly. You will not walk alone." Ryan nodded, adjusting the jacket that had been provided. "I am ready," he said, though he was not certain if he was. "I think I understand what is at stake." "You understand only the surface," Sola replied. "The trials are not just for show. Every choice will be watched and every hesitation noted. Remember that." As they walked through the corridors of the stronghold, Ryan noticed details he had not before. The walls were carved with symbols he did not recognize, but they spoke of power, of history, of rules older than any human empire. He felt small, not insignificant, but human in a way that made the weight of the sisters' presence heavier. The council chamber was enormous, circular, with a high domed ceiling. Light poured from above, reflecting off polished metal floors. Figures were already seated around the edges, cloaked in the family's ceremonial robes. At the center, Luma stood, her gaze meeting his. She nodded once, and he felt a strange sense of relief. "You may speak," the eldest counselor said, her voice low and commanding. "Explain yourself, human. Why do you believe you are worthy of our bond?" Ryan took a steady breath. "I acted without thought of reward or recognition," he said. "I saved a life because it was right. I do not seek more than understanding and respect. I will follow your customs as best as I can, and I will protect those entrusted to me." A murmur ran through the chamber. Kiera's eyes narrowed slightly, but she did not speak. Veen's shadowed presence remained quiet at the back. Sola tilted her head, studying him, searching for any sign of deception. The eldest sister spoke again. Words alone are not proof. Actions must follow. You will face trials designed to measure courage, judgment, and loyalty. Only then can you claim the bond fully. Ryan's stomach tightened. He had trained for negotiations, for diplomacy, not for trials that could determine life and death. What kind of trials? He asked carefully. The first is a test of mind, Sola explained. You will navigate challenges designed to reveal your decision-making. One wrong choice could harm innocence. Observe carefully, think clearly, and act swiftly. Ryan nodded. He had never faced something like this. On Earth, errors were corrected through discussion or policy. Here, the stakes were immediate and the consequences real. The council moved him to a large chamber that resembled a labyrinth. Walls shifted subtly, corridors changing with each step. Holographic projections appeared, creating scenarios that mimicked the city outside, but altered in ways meant to challenge perception and judgment. A simulated crowd panicked as alarms rang. Ryan noticed an injured figure in the middle, clearly part of the test. His instincts pushed him forward, but a voice in his head reminded him to think. Every movement counted. He approached the figure, assessing the situation. The crowd was blocking a safe path. He needed to clear it without causing more harm. Ryan spoke softly, using calm gestures, guiding the figures back, moving the injured to safety. Suddenly, a section of the floor shifted. He had only moments to react, pulling the injured figure away from a trap that would have crushed them. The exercise ended as abruptly as it began. The walls retracted and the council appeared again. You reacted well, Kira said, stepping forward. But awareness of consequences is only part of loyalty. Do not confuse instinct with understanding. You must act for all, not just for those in immediate danger. Ryan exhaled, sweat cooling on his brow. I understand. I will try to think beyond instinct. The next trial began almost immediately. This time he was led outside to the cliffs overlooking the city. A group of cadets stood, armed with training weapons, waiting to test his courage. Ryan was instructed to lead them through a series of obstacles while threats simulated real danger. He guided them carefully, placing himself in the path of potential harm to shield the cadets. A falling beam nearly struck him, but he pushed one cadet out of the way. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he did not falter. The sisters watched closely, their faces unreadable. When the exercise ended, the cadets bowed to him, acknowledging his leadership. He looked to the sisters, unsure if he had succeeded. You have courage, Veen said finally, stepping from the shadows. Her voice was quiet but carried weight. But courage without foresight is folly. Remember that. Ryan nodded, feeling both pride and fear. The final test of loyalty was to come, though none had explained how it would unfold. He sensed it would not be an easy choice. The sisters' eyes hinted at unseen challenges, and he realized that the tests were not just physical or mental, they were moral. The day ended with him back in the chambers, exhaustion pressing down on him. Luma approached, her presence calm and reassuring. You have done well today, she said, but tomorrow is different. The trial of loyalty is not simple. It will ask you to choose between duty and desire, between protection and sacrifice. Ryan's mind raced. He had survived the tests of mind and courage, but loyalty was more complex than he could imagine. One wrong step could unravel everything he had done. As night fell, he lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling. The city's lights shimmered far below, and the distant hum of activity reminded him that life continued outside these walls. But his life had changed forever. He was bound to the sisters in ways he could not yet fully understand. He thought of Earth, of home, and of the simple expectations of his mission. Those expectations had been replaced with challenges that tested every part of him. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that the path forward would not be easy. Tomorrow, he would face the trial of loyalty. one human against the traditions and power of an alien bloodline. He closed his eyes, trying to summon courage, knowing that what he did next would shape not only his fate, but the fate of the sisters who had bound him with a single act of survival. The sun had barely risen when Ryan was awakened by a faint tapping at his door. Veen stood there, silent and still as always, her eyes unreadable. Without a word, she motioned for him to follow. He rose quickly, feeling the weight of anticipation pressing on his shoulders. Today would be the trial of loyalty. He did not yet know what it would demand, but he could feel it would test not only his courage and mind, but his heart. They walked through corridors he had not yet seen, walls lined with the family's ancient symbols, the same markings that seemed to watch him, judging each step. Veen led him to a large chamber. Its ceiling stretched high, adorned with lights that shimmered like stars. In the center, a holographic projection displayed the city below, but it was altered, threats appeared, civilians in danger and impossible choices unfolded before him. Kiera stepped forward, her expression unreadable. This is your trial. Loyalty is not about following orders blindly. It is about knowing when to act, when to sacrifice, and when to protect those who cannot protect themselves. You will face scenarios that force these decisions. Fail, and the bond will not hold. Ryan swallowed hard. This was more than he had expected. It was one thing to survive attacks or lead cadets, but to act with perfect judgment when lives were at stake was another entirely. I understand, he said. I will do my best. The first scenario began immediately. Ryan watched as holographic citizens ran from collapsing buildings, some trapped, others panicked. An enemy strike was simulated, and he had only moments to decide who to save first. His instincts screamed to act quickly, but he forced himself to observe. Which choice would save the most lives? Which would prevent the greatest harm? He moved decisively, guiding simulated civilians to safety, lifting debris and shielding the injured. Each action brought a new challenge, a falling beam here, a fire spreading there. He did not pause, but his mind raced, weighing consequences in real time. The sisters watched silently, their faces giving nothing away. Kira's eyes were sharp and calculating. Sola's measured every movement, and Veen's presence was like a shadow, following him without a sound. When the scenario ended, the projections vanished. The chamber returned to its calm state, but Ryan felt a heavy weight settle over him. He had acted to save lives, but had he chosen correctly in every instance? He did not know, and the uncertainty gnawed at him. Good, Kira said finally, her voice low and approving. You acted with courage and thought, but the trial is not complete. You must now demonstrate that loyalty is not only for those in immediate danger, but for those whose trust depends on you. Before he could ask what that meant, the chamber shifted. Holographic corridors opened, leading him into a simulation of the city's streets. This time, the scenario was different. Citizens were not just in danger, they were under attack by an unknown force. Ryan had to lead them to safety, while also making sure he did not endanger those around him. He moved quickly but carefully. Each decision mattered. He diverted people to safer paths, guided those who hesitated, and even risked himself to shield others from falling debris. He began to understand that loyalty was not just about protecting lives. It was about earning trust, about showing that he could be relied upon in moments of chaos. The final test approached. A projection of Luma appeared, her figure indistinct, caught in a scenario where she was in danger from a simulated raider strike. Ryan's instincts surged. He moved to protect her, navigating the obstacles with precision, keeping her out of harm's way. When the simulation ended, the chamber returned to stillness. The sisters emerged from the shadows, their expressions unreadable. You have shown judgment, courage, and protection, Sola said. But loyalty is tested over time, not just in one moment. Today you have passed, but the bond requires continuous demonstration. Understand this. Your choices affect not just yourself but the entire house." Ryan nodded, understanding more clearly now what he had agreed to, even if he had not asked for it. This bond was not simple. It was not about ownership or affection alone. It was about responsibility, vigilance, and action. Luma approached, her gaze softening as she looked at him. "You have done well," she said quietly. "The others may still test you in their own ways, but you have proven that you are not weak. That is a rare quality." Ryan's heart lifted slightly, but he knew the day was not yet over. There would be more challenges, more tests of his loyalty and judgment. The sisters' eyes followed him as he moved, each glance a reminder that he was bound to them in ways deeper than he had imagined. He spent the rest of the day training under the sisters' supervision, learning their customs, their ways of moving, speaking, and commanding respect. Each lesson was subtle, and each action he took was observed and critiqued. It was exhausting, but Ryan felt a growing understanding. The bond was not a simple obligation. It was a living relationship, shaped by action, thought, and commitment. By the evening, Ryan returned to his quarters, physically drained but mentally alert. He thought of the trials he had faced and of the sisters' watchful eyes. He realized that survival and loyalty were not enough. He had to embrace responsibility, to think ahead, and to act decisively in every situation. As he lay down, the weight of the day pressed on him. He could hear the distant hum of the city, the soft wind through the towers, and the faint presence of the sisters in his mind. Loyalty was not a gift, it was a challenge, and one that would not end with a single trial. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new dangers, and new choices. Ryan closed his eyes, steeling himself for what lay ahead. One human against the expectations of an ancient alien house, bound by law, honor, and necessity. The path forward was unclear, but he knew he could not falter. He had survived today, but the trial of loyalty had only begun. And in the shadow of the sisters' watch, he understood that every moment from now on would shape the bond that tied him to 4 lives, and to a future he could not yet imagine. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint metallic scent of the city below. Ryan rose from the cot, muscles sore but alert. Today, he knew, would test more than his body or mind. It would test the very core of his loyalty to the sisters. The weight of responsibility pressed on him like a solid wall, and he could feel the eyes of Kira, Sola, and Veen watching from the shadows, even when they were not in the room. Luma entered first, her presence calm and steady. "Today is not only a trial of loyalty," she said quietly, "but a trial of choice. You will be faced with situations where you cannot save everyone. Your actions must balance duty, protection, and consequence. Remember, the bond is not granted through survival alone." Ryan nodded, taking in her words. They were heavy with meaning, and he understood that this trial would define the limits of his commitment. He followed her through corridors leading to the central courtyard, where the sisters awaited. Kira stepped forward, her stance commanding. "We will not guide you this time," she said. "You must act with judgment and awareness, for the city and its people are under simulated attack. Choose wisely." The courtyard transformed as holographic projections filled the air. Buildings shook, fires erupted, and citizens ran in panic. An enemy strike simulated from multiple angles forced Ryan to make split-second decisions. Civilians were trapped in different locations, some crying out for help, others frozen in fear. Ryan's heart pounded. Instinct told him to rush to the nearest group, but his mind reminded him that loyalty required more than instinct. It required judgment. He quickly scanned the area, weighing the risk of each choice. Which group would survive without his intervention? Which route would save the most lives? He ran toward a collapsed building where a family was trapped, lifting debris carefully and guiding them to safety. Flames threatened to cut off his path to another group, forcing him to make a hard decision. He could save only one set of people at a time, and he chose to protect the injured first, placing himself between danger and them. A simulated explosion rocked the courtyard, sending dust and sparks into the air. Ryan shielded the civilians, taking a blow to his side from falling debris. Pain flared, but he pushed forward, guiding the remaining citizens to safe zones. Each step was a balance of action and foresight, testing his endurance and judgment simultaneously. The sisters observed in silence. Kira's expression remained tight, Sola's eyes measured, and Veen's quiet presence was like a constant pressure. Ryan understood that their approval would not be given lightly. Every move, every choice was being recorded, judged, and remembered. Finally, the scenario ended. The holograms vanished, leaving Ryan standing in the courtyard, bruised and breathing heavily. The sisters approached, their steps deliberate. "You have demonstrated courage and foresight," Kira said, "but loyalty is more than action. It is commitment to the whole, even when faced with impossible choices." Veen spoke next, her voice quiet but cutting. "Today you acted not only for those in immediate danger but for the principle that binds this house. That is loyalty. Understand it and the bond strengthens. Fail and the consequences are yours to bear." Ryan nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and continued tension. He had acted with care, with judgment, with protection in mind. He had survived the trial, but he knew the sisters' eyes would continue to follow him, watching for hesitation, weakness, or selfishness. Luma stepped closer, placing a hand briefly on his arm. "You have passed the trial of loyalty," she said softly. "But remember, this is only the beginning. The bond is not static. It grows, strengthens, and tests you daily. You must be ready." Ryan's mind turned to the implications. He was bound not only to Luma but to her sisters, to the rules of a culture he barely understood. Every choice, every action would ripple outward, affecting lives and the fate of the clan. The responsibility was immense, but he felt a growing understanding of what was expected. The day ended with him returning to his quarters, exhausted but mentally alert. He had faced judgment, danger, and moral dilemmas beyond anything he had imagined. Yet through it all, he had survived, and more importantly, he had acted with intention, thought, and courage. As he lay down, Ryan thought about the path ahead. The bond was not a simple contract or agreement. It was a living, breathing relationship, defined by action, responsibility, and loyalty. He would need to continue learning, adapting, and proving himself, not just to the sisters, but to the principles they represented. The city outside shimmered under the light of the twin suns, alive with movement, unaware of the trials that had taken place above. Ryan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his new role. He was no longer just a human envoy. He was a protector, a participant in an ancient and powerful bond, bound to four sisters whose expectations would shape his every decision. He understood now that survival alone was not enough. Loyalty was tested through action, through difficult choices, and through the willingness to bear responsibility for more than oneself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Ryan felt a quiet resolve growing within him. He had passed the trial of loyalty, but the path of the bond stretched endlessly before him. Every moment would be a test. Every choice would matter. And in the quiet of his room, he realized that this human, once sent as an envoy, was now fully entwined in the fate of a powerful alien house, bound by trust, action, and the unbreakable threads of loyalty that connected them all.